flutes can be difficult to play, but they're also very rewarding to play. So I'm going to address maybe some of those difficulties and hopefully make them less difficult and more rewarding, okay? So, well, there's a couple things we're going to want to talk about. We'll want to talk about posture. Another factor in playing old flutes is your breath, right? The strength of your breath and where it comes from. Also, your Meri-Kari position, right? How high, how low are you playing? And also your fingering is going to be important. So we're going to talk about those four things, right? Posture, breath, Meri-Kari, and fingering, right? In no particular order. But we'll go ahead and take posture first. You'll see I'm sitting this way. I sit this way because it's comfortable. I have a cushion behind me, right? And I'm on a zabuton here, regular floor mat, right? And that brings my butt up just a little bit. And I like my feet on top of my legs, again, because it's comfortable. Sometimes you read things about like, Zen is about pain. Like, this isn't Zen, it's just actually just a comfortable way to sit. That's really all it's about. And it's not about pain. If it hurts, you shouldn't do it. Why would you hurt yourself for no reason, right? Find a comfortable way to sit. The reason I like this personally is because it brings my knees slightly below my hips. You want to have this kind of has the effect of opening up your abdominal breathing space, and that feels good. So that's why I do it. If you're standing, that's fine as well. If you're sitting, sitting is fine. Sitting on a chair is fine. But try to find a way to sit where your knees are not doing this, right? If it kind of crunches you up like this, then it's going to close up your breathing space down here, and you won't be able to get a full breath, and it won't feel as good, and it won't be as beneficial to you in the long run. So finding a good way to sit is good. Posture also, again, you're not just opening up this, you're opening up your whole body. So you shouldn't feel like anything is squeezing you in when you're playing. So again, if we were spending time on computers going like this, or if you're holding in feelings, right? We can hold a lot of kind of anger can come down here, right? There's a Japanese saying, hara ga tatsu, right? Your hara is standing up, right? Because you're angry. Because certain emotions do actually locate themselves in parts of our bodies, or sometimes if we're avoiding certain feelings, they can pile up in certain places. And this will actually help us to let go of those things and let them flow into your playing, right? Let your feelings kind of flow into your playing, and maybe discover something that you were feeling that you didn't even know about. But it's nice to be able to have a posture that says that, right? And if you kind of make some effort to comfortably sit up straight, keep your spine aligned, let your lower abdomen be open, let your chest be open, right? Let your heart be open, let your throat be open. Just so you can breathe comfortably, right? Take a deep breath. And let it out slowly, and that should feel good, right? And that's actually going to naturally flow into the second thing that we want to talk about, which is, where is your breath coming from? If I take this old flute, and again, I picked this for a reason, by the way, because it's very difficult to play. New flutes, you expect them to honk, you expect them to have a really strong row. This does not. If you blow it from your chest, as if you were blowing out a candle, you get either nothing, or it jumps into the second octaves. You don't get your lower row out of this flute, and it's like, wow, what's wrong with it? It doesn't work well, right? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe there's something we can do about it. So, Shakuhachi breathing is lower abdominal breathing, right? The Tanden Kokyu hole, right? The lower abdominal, or Dantian breathing method is what we talk about in Japanese. It's something that I've gotten both implicitly and explicitly from various teachers and various sources. Let's see, the Okamoto Chikungai writes about it. Akikazu Nakamura, right? Nakamura Akikazu Nakamoto's the last name. He writes about it in his book as well, and he's got his own particular breathing method that's something else altogether as well. But what he has in common with the present conversation is that we're using our lower abdominal muscles to support the breath, right? So you breathe in, maybe your stomach naturally expands, or maybe you kind of roll your posture up to accommodate that breath. And then as you're breathing out, you can feel you should feel like that breath is actually kind of sinking down into your center of gravity, right? And how do you achieve that feeling? What you want to do is especially on the out breath, right? You want to engage your abdominal muscles. And that includes the muscles back here, not just the ones up here. You want to be careful not to kind of arch your back too much to try to squeeze out that last drop of breath, right? That's not comfortable and that's not necessary. Shakuhachi players who have a long breath because it's efficient, not because they can squeeze out every last drop. You don't need to strain for this, right? So breathe in. And if I was to illustrate a little bit in an exaggerated sense, right? If we were to push in on my abdomen, I could push the flute out a little bit. Right, that's because these lower abdominal muscles are being engaged. And again, you don't want to engage them just by going like this. That'll be comfortable, and that'll kind of lead to back pain when you're playing. Have you ever felt that when you're playing for a long time, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and it starts to hurt down here? That's because probably you're pushing out too much with your lower back. Rather than that, you actually want to go ahead and roll your hips under a little bit. And that way you're supporting your lower abdomen, not with your bones, but with your muscles, right? Your muscles are designed to support your body. You don't need to bend your bones to the limit or anything like that to get that extra bit of breath. It should be comfortable. And again, as a disclaimer, if it's not comfortable, please don't do it. There's probably something the matter if it feels extremely uncomfortable. This should feel relatively natural. It might be a way of breathing that you're not used to, but the idea is just to have just comfortable, natural, deep breathing that's supported by your lower abdomen, right? So again, the thing that is a little bit unique here, that wasn't necessarily unique to the samurai who were playing shakuhachi, right? They're wearing kimonos. Kimono, he has an obi. It's a belt, a very thick belt that kind of wraps right around your lower abdomen. So you're used to having this part supported, and it's actually natural when you're training for martial arts or anything else to have that similar breathing method where the energy is kind of brought from here and sent to the rest of the body, right? And then what that does is it gives you a very stable breath. So let's talk about actually playing the shakuhachi. All right, so we've got our posture, we have our supported breath, and we are engaging the lower abdomen on the out breath specifically, right? So your abdomen might expand a little bit in the in breath, and it actually expands on the out breath as well. So as your air is coming out, you've got this nice supported pressure system inside of you, and you're maintaining even pressure right down here from a low point, right? If you're putting all the pressure up here, it's very unstable. It's easy for things to become unstabilized. And if you're blowing into a natural piece of bamboo, that will cause the sound to become unstable as well. So you want something that's supported from a deep place in you, even metaphorically as well. That's kind of nice, isn't it? Before we make a sound, though, we have to think about Meri-Kari position as well. Lots of modern players or modern flute players, especially at the beginning, will be taught to play Meri-Kari. That's not necessarily incorrect. New flutes can handle that. In fact, you get more harmonics by playing a Meri-Kari position on them. However, old flutes are usually not going to accept that, and they won't give you a good tone from doing that. You'll actually get a very thin, hollow, empty tone, but not in the cool way, you know? It just doesn't really have anything behind it because nothing is resonating in there. Take a look at the Utaguchi on this. If I hold it up straight, you can see that the Utaguchi is actually slightly angled forward. Instead of this is what you'd usually expect, but it's angled forward towards the mouthpiece. This maker really wants you to get down in there, bring your breath to a more Medy position. Generally speaking, you want something that is not Kari, not Medy, but neutral. That's where you're going to get the strong, kind of warm sound and the nice tone out of your flute. And then from that position, as you play, you will need to adjust to create the notes yourself, right? You're actually playing from your heart and expressing those with your breath. It's a negotiation together with the flute, right? Again, you're creating one pressure system. That's why this actually works. It's not, as Dr. Yamada likes to say, don't make it I play the flute. You actually have to join yourself and become one with the flute if you want, right? That sounds cheesy, but like there's something literally true about that that's happening, because you're creating a pressure system inside of you that extends into the flute. So you're actually becoming part of that feedback system and that pressure system. You're feeling what the flute does to push back against you, and you're kind of negotiating with the flute as how much air you can give it, and you're actually giving firm support so that pressure is not just happening in the flute, but it's actually supported down into your body as well. So that's what's going on there. All right, so again, we're going to go, instead of blowing hard from the chest, Kari, which just jumps into the con octave right away. We're going to have a gentle breath. It's coming from here, supported, and we're going to go down into the flute in a more Medy position. Not all the way Medy, but neutral Medy, right? So instead of no sound now, we have the flute's sound, which is a gentle row sound. It's not going to blast. This one is not going to have a loud row, but it has enough, and it's got its own personality, and the tone is there, right? And that's enough for me. The more I get to know this flute also, the more powerful the row becomes, even though initially it seems like it's not there at all, but if you know how to look for it, you can find it. Right, and it's that breath. As much as that breath comes from down here, that tone comes out, right? And you start to get the personality of the flute itself. And now, again, if we do no adjustment with our body, if we just tell the flute what to do, it's not going to listen. Here's what the rest of the flute sounds like. What? It's a bad flute. No. Don't judge it too quickly. You have to get to know it a little bit. All right? And again, as a disclaimer, I'm playing my style. We don't use the deeper Medy there for the tsu usually. I can do it, but I don't. Again, I play without shading, so you hear a chi that's a little bit sharper than you're used to, but I like that sound, so that's what I play. All right, so we've talked about posture, we've talked about breathing, we've talked about our Meri-Kari position. The last thing that might be a factor in any flute that you have is the fingering. There's one thing to keep in mind, especially with longer flutes. It's not actually an issue on this flute, but with longer flutes, for the upper octave, the ha and the e, you might call that he and ha no go, or he and he no go. There's a different ways of expressing it in different schools, but this and this, right? In the upper octave. Sometimes they don't work as well with both lower holes closed. Sometimes you got to open the second hole as well for those two, right? This is a very thin flute, so it works both ways, right? But if you find yourself playing a wider bore flute, chances are that those are going to sound a little bit better, or sometimes they won't sound at all if you don't open up the second hole as well. So for Ha, instead of 3 and 4 open, you've got 2, 3, and 4 open. For E, instead of 3, 4, 5, you've got 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? And that'll give you a better sound. Some notation styles even indicate this explicitly. I was actually taught that the Kinko style, you notice in the lower octave they have Ri, the upper octave they have Hi. Katakana characters indicate fingering, not pitch. So Ri is this, Hi is this, right? So again, I don't know that everybody teaches it that way, but that is apparently what it means, or what it has meant to some people. So there you have it. Now, as for this flute itself, it's a pretty neat flute. I got it very inexpensively just recently. I'm guessing something like 100 years old, 200 years old. I don't know. It's got kind of a caramel color to it, telling you that the bamboo has seen some time. You can't always judge everything by the color, though. Although a darker color like this generally does tell you that it's got some age to it, right? In person, it's actually a little bit darker than it's appearing in the video right now. You can also take a look at the deckling on top. The parts of the bamboo, the fibers that would suck the water up into the plant, they tend to kind of stick out a little bit as the rest of the bamboo recedes from them as it dries over many, many years. And that's what, if you feel this here, you can kind of feel the texture of those fibers sticking out of the bamboo a bit. That means it's had quite a long time to dry. The front of the utaguchi probably got sort of, very deep brown or black like the rest of the flute. You can see it's lighter now because somebody somewhere along the line decided they needed to clean it up. Maybe it got a little bit rough as it dried, right? As that happens with the fibers sticking out, sometimes that'll actually create some friction here and resistance to your breath. So somebody who's actually using the flute might want to smooth it out a bit, and it looks like that's what they did here. The other interesting thing is that even though it seems to be on the surface a bad flute, or a badly made flute, or a hard to play flute, somebody spent a lot of time playing it. You can see there's I don't think it shows up on the video, but there's quite a bit of wear around the finger holes. You can see that somebody has been holding it and moving their fingers on it for many years. So somebody not only made this flute, but played this flute and liked it a lot. And that's kind of nice to know that we're in company with kind of interesting people, Sometimes it wasn't about professional makers. It wasn't about having the most easy to play flute. It's about having one flute that you get to know really well and being able to express yourself on that. So maybe there's something to be said for that as well. The last thing I'll say about this flute is it does have a little bit of a quirk. It may be because of the very thin bore diameter, but that causes some of the notes to be a little bit off. And one thing that I notice is if I want to play the flute in tune with itself, if I close all the holes for Hon-on, there's something a little bit off there. But so I don't really resist it, I don't fight it, I just leave the thumb hole partly open and it plays fine for me. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. And again, finally, just to recap, remember, knees below hips, right? Open up your breathing spaces. Sit up straight without straining, right? Feel that openness in your body with the breath, with your in-breath, with your breath, whatever that is. And then breathe out. And keep that even pressure by letting the breath come from here. Let the breath come from here by engaging your lower abdominal muscles and also tilting your hips a little bit so that you don't hurt your back. You get a nice deep supported breath. You don't have to blow. It doesn't have to be super strong. It just has to be supported right in your body. And then finally, think about Meri-Kari. Don't try to play it too kari. Lots of people will have habits of doing that, but old flutes will not respond to that, and they won't give you a good tone from that. And in fact, even modern ji-ari players who are kind of at the top of the playing spectrum will also have that same effect. The thing is that ji-ari flute will make a sound for you in almost anything, any breath, right? It's very easy to make a sound on them. It's actually very challenging to get a really true and unique tone color. And that's where old flutes come in, because they will not make a sound for you if you just blow. You actually have to have that supported breath. But it's having that supported breath and finding the place where the flute resonates that will actually give you a better tone on a ji-ari as well. So it's nothing lost if you play both, right? They can kind of feed into each other and teach you something about each other. Right. The final thing to remember, though, is also the fingering can be a factor, especially in wide bore flutes or in some longer flutes as well. You want to make sure that you open up enough finger holes to let enough air out so that the higher sounds can actually form, right? You notice if they're not getting enough air, sometimes you'll get something where they just won't seem to go up enough. They'll seem to be lower, or they'll seem to be very thin, and they won't really actually materialize completely. It's like Captain Picard's being beamed down, and it's just going whoosh, and the body never comes into that thing. If you don't know about Star Trek, I'm sorry. Hopefully I can be forgiven that little nerd tidbit there, okay? So, lots of love to you folks. See you around.